The town of Oakhaven was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. Or so I thought. My name is Lucy, and I lived in a small blue house with a squeaky front gate. Every street was lined with identical, sleepy-looking trees, and the biggest event of the year was the annual bake sale at the town hall. I spent most of my summer vacation at my grandmother's house, a rambling old building on the edge of town. It had creaky floors, dusty furniture, and an attic that smelled like forgotten memories. It was up there, in that forgotten space, that my ordinary summer turned into a living nightmare. Grandma always said the attic was off limits. Too many old things, Lucy, she'd warn. You could get hurt. But one sweltering afternoon while she was napping, my curiosity got the better of me. I tiptoed up the narrow, rickety stairs, the wood groaning under my sneakers. A single beam of sunlight cut through the grime on a tiny window, illuminating swirling dust motes. The air was thick and heavy, and shadows clung to every corner like giant spiders. Old trunks, forgotten paintings, and mountains of yellowed newspapers were everywhere. It was a treasure trove of mysteries, just waiting to be explored. I pushed aside a stack of old magazines and saw it. Tucked away in a dusty, forgotten corner was an old wooden chest, its lock long broken. I lifted the heavy lid and my breath caught in my throat. Lying on a bed of faded red velvet was a doll. She was beautiful, with porcelain skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her dress was made of intricate lace, a bit yellowed with age, but still elegant. Her hair was a cascade of perfect black ringlets, and her eyes were the most striking part. They were made of piercing blue glass, so lifelike they seemed to follow my every move. I carefully lifted the doll from her velvet prison. She was heavier than I expected, and her porcelain felt cool against my skin. There was something odd about her, a strange stillness that felt more like she was holding her breath than just being an object. I knew I had to have her. I decided to name her Clara. Ignoring the little voice in my head that whispered a warning, I snuck her out of the attic, hiding her under my shirt. Grandma would never know. I couldn't wait to take Clara home, to my very own room. Little did I know, I wasn't just taking home a doll. I was taking home a dark secret. Back in my room, Clara looked even more stunning. I placed her on the small rocking chair in the corner, the one my dad had made for me when I was little. She sat there perfectly, her painted smile seeming to widen just a little. "You're going to love it here, Clara," I told her, arranging her lace dress just so. The moonlight streamed through my window, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. As I got ready for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I glanced over, Clara's glass eyes seemed to be staring right back at me, unblinking and intense. That night, the whispering started. It was faint at first, like the rustling of leaves outside my window. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled the covers up to my chin. But the sound grew louder, closer. It was a soft, sibilant whisper, and it seemed to be coming from the corner of the room. "Lucy." It hissed. My heart hammered against my ribs. I slowly peeked over my blanket. The room was still, and Clara was exactly where I had left her, sitting silently in her chair. I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe I was dreaming. But the voice had sounded so real, so chillingly close. The next day, strange things began to happen. My favorite hairbrush went missing, only to turn up inside the dollhouse in the living room, a place I hadn't played with in years. The pages of my diary were mysteriously flipped to a blank page, with a single spidery C scrawled in the middle. I knew it had to be Clara. I would place her facing the window, and when I returned to my room, she would be facing the door. Her sweet, painted smile now looked more like a sinister smirk. I was starting to feel a cold dread creep into my heart every time I entered my own room. Each night, the whispers grew more demanding. "Play with me, Lucy," Clara would hiss from her chair. I started sleeping with my light on, but it didn't help. The shadows still danced in the corners, and the whispers still slithered into my dreams. I told my parents something was wrong with the doll, but they just smiled. "Oh, Lucy," my mom said, patting my head, "you have such a vivid imagination." They didn't believe me. No one did. I was alone with Clara, and I was becoming more and more terrified of what she would do next. The doll wasn't just a toy, it was alive. Perfect. One night, the whispers changed. They were no longer just calling my name. "Let's play a game, Lucy," Clara's voice echoed in the silent room, sharp and clear. "A forever game." A chill ran down my spine, cold as ice. I sat bolt upright in bed, my eyes darting to the corner. The rocking chair was empty. My blood ran cold. Where was she? Suddenly, I heard a soft thud right beside my bed. I looked down, and there she was. Clara was standing on the floor, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her glass eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. She had moved all by herself. Panic seized me. I scrambled out of bed, trying to get to the door, but my feet felt heavy, as if I were wading through thick mud. The room seemed to warp and stretch around me. The door, which was only a few feet away, now looked like it was at the end of a long, dark tunnel. Laughter filled the air, a high-pitched, tinkling sound that was both childlike and terrifyingly evil. It was Clara. "You can't leave, Lucy," she whispered, her voice now coming from everywhere at once. "We're going to be best friends. Forever."
Cody.
The room grew colder, and shadowy hands seemed to reach out from the walls, trying to grab me. I was trapped. Clara's game was a nightmare, and I was her prisoner. The doll skittered across the floor, moving with a jerky, unnatural speed that made my skin crawl. She was blocking my path to the door, her painted smile a grotesque leer. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her win. My eyes frantically searched the room for a weapon, for anything to help me escape. Then I saw it. The old fireplace my dad had boarded up, but never fully sealed. He always kept a box of long fireplace matches on the mantelpiece, just in case. An idea, desperate and dangerous, sparked in my mind. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged for the mantelpiece, my fingers closing around the matchbox. Clara shrieked, a sound of pure rage, and scrambled towards me. I struck a match, the tiny flame flaring to life in the darkness. "Get away from me!" I screamed, my voice trembling. I threw the lit match directly at her lace dress. For a second, nothing happened. Then a tiny orange flame licked at the ancient fabric. It erupted into a blaze. Clara let out an unearthly scream as the fire consumed her, her beautiful porcelain face cracking and melting in the intense heat. The smell of burning plastic and something else, something foul and ancient, filled the air. The doll's terrifying screams finally faded into a sickening crackle as the flames devoured her. The shadowy hands receded, and the room snapped back to its normal size. Freedom. I gasped for breath, coughing from the thick, acrid smoke that now choked the room. My bedroom door burst open, and my parents rushed in, their faces masks of confusion and horror. "Lucy, what happened?" my dad yelled, grabbing the fire extinguisher from the hallway and putting out the small blaze on the floor. They saw the charred, melted lump of porcelain and lace on my rug. They saw the terror in my eyes. They finally believed me. My mom wrapped me in a tight hug, her own body trembling. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, stroking my hair. "It's over now." We stood there for a long time, huddled together in the smoky room. The fire alarm blared through the house, a shrill sound that felt like it was trying to purge the evil that had invaded our home. My dad stamped out the last of the embers, leaving a blackened scar on my bedroom floor, a permanent reminder of my battle with Clara. The next day, my dad threw the burnt remains of the doll into a metal trash can and took it far, far away. We scrubbed the floor, aired out the room, and even bought me a new, cheerful-looking lamp. My parents told me I was safe, that the nightmare was over, and for a while, I almost believed them. I tried to go back to being the normal Lucy from the sleepy town of Oakhaven. I tried to forget the piercing glass eyes, the sinister whispers, and the terrifying game. But some things you can never truly forget. The fear had left a stain on my soul. Even now, months later, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, my heart pounding in my chest. I still sleep with the light on, and I can't stand the sight of dolls anymore. The house is quiet, and the corner of my room is empty. But sometimes, when the house is silent and the wind howls just right, I think I can still hear it. A faint, distant whisper carried on the breeze, hissing my name. Lucy. It's a chilling reminder that even though Clara is gone, a part of her darkness might just be with me, forever.